Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones. This is Season 11, Episode 12. Today I'm speaking with food writer, author, Allison Walsh. Allison first began cooking as a way to stretch her post-college paycheck, and her love of cooking grew. In 2014, she combined her love of food and books into Allison's Wonderland Recipes blog, a food blog dedicated to book-inspired recipes. Her newest book is A Literary Picnic. We'll be talking with Allison in a bit. Her previous books are A Literary Tea Party and A Literary Holiday Cookbook. I'll take you now to my conversation with Allison Walsh. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones. Today, I'm very happy to have back on the program again, Allison Walsh, to talk about her book, A Literary Picnic. Allison Walsh first began cooking as a way to stretch her post-college paycheck, and her love of cooking grew. In 2014, she combined her love of food and books into Allison's Wonderland Recipes, a food blog dedicated to book-inspired recipes. Her newest book is A Literary Picnic. Allison, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Now, I know you largely from your blog, Allison Wonderland's Recipes. Can you talk about the blog and why you started it?
I started Allison's Wonderland Recipes back in, I think, January 2014. So this was quite a while ago. I was really encouraged by my husband and my friends and my family. I had been doing a lot of cooking for fun, and they kept saying that I should start a blog, but I didn't want to do the same thing everybody else was doing because there were a lot of food blogs out already. So I looked around for what I felt fit my interests, but also I looked around for kind of a niche that I felt wasn't being filled. And so I knew I wanted to do fiction themed recipes because I love to read. And I also noticed that there weren't really any blogs at the time doing full menus of recipes based around one book. So that was kind of what I focused on, was picking one book a month and then doing a full menu around that one book.
Now, I'm a fan of fantasy and different books, and I always think about the characters and you do kind of, if you like something and you are a collector of a certain author, or if you like specific books, and I know many people, like, for example, Alice in Wonderland. There are people that will dedicate their whole house to it, and I think that, like, if you like a certain author or you like certain series of stories, like say The Hobbit, you really start thinking about it. And I've had times where my friends and I will sit around and say, well, who would you invite from this? And who would you invite from this to a dinner party? Do you get a lot of feedback? I mean, because I know this is something that book nerds talk about a lot. Did you get a lot of feedback when you started your blog?
Yeah, there were a lot of people who were really excited to see recipes based around their favorite books, especially whole menus, because then you can like host a party that's themed around that book. Or a lot of times there's a movie based on the book, so they would do like a watch party and then make all of the food from the blog for the watch party.
Now, I wanted to ask you about your newest book, A Literary Picnic. How did that idea come about for you?
I had the idea to do a picnic themed literary cookbook for quite a while. The reason I hadn't done it initially was because I kind of knew that it would probably be smaller than my other cookbooks. My tea time cookbook and my holiday cookbook, I had a lot of inspiration for what I would put into those. But for picnics, there were fewer things that I felt fit the theme. So I decided to use that idea now because with where I'm kind of at in my life, like I have two small children and we homeschool and all of that. So there are more demands on my time than there used to be. So I knew that if I was going to do another book now, it would have to be a mini book. So I felt that picnic theme kind of fit doing like a 5 menu book better than it would with some of those other themes.
Was it hard just narrowing it down to 5 menus? Because I know that, like, for me, if I was doing it, I'd probably do 100 and like go crazy and just give up. But did you have a hard time reining yourself in?
It was, and part of what made it necessary to do that was, again, just time constraints. I had to be hard on myself and be like, no, you can't do this one. You know, you don't have time.
Yeah.
So it was hard because there were a few that had to be cut. When it came down to it, I think I could have made it about double the size that it was, but it would have taken twice as long to do.
So was it basically, I'm like, what was the criteria for selecting the ones you did choose? Was there a certain kind of uh like the amount of characters, or was there certain criteria that you used?
I did want books that had a very summary kind of feel to them, or at least ones that would fit a summer type theme. And I wanted a lot of variety in the kinds of characters and stories that I was focusing on simply because it was such a small book. It's easier to kind of do, like you could do Anne of Green Gables and Alice in Wonderland and The Secret Garden and Heidi. And these are all books that they're all kind of written for the same age group, and they all have a young female main character. And so the menus can start to feel very samey if that's all there is. So I also wanted to make sure that I had good variety in the types of stories that I was putting in.
Can you talk about some of the characters that are included in the book, and then also some of the ones that you ended up not using?
Alice in Wonderland made the final cut for obvious reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
I also have Peter Rabbit and what else? There's Winnie the Pooh
Oh,
and The Secret Garden. And then I also did one that's fairy tale themed, but each recipe is from a different fairy tale.
no, I like that. Now, who didn't make the cut?
Anne of Green Gables didn't make the final cut, but that one made me a little bit sad.
Oh, yeah.
That was probably one of the hardest ones. And I think it was because one of the things that came into play when I was making those final cuts was just which menus did I feel like I already had a really clear idea of what direction I wanted to take it in. Like I knew what I wanted to do for The Secret Garden. I knew what I wanted to do for Alice in Wonderland. So I didn't want to cut those because I felt like they had already kind of like sprung up fully formed.
Once you had chosen the books and the themes, was it hard for you to conceptualize the food that you utilized?
Not really. I found that giving myself parameters to work under actually helps because otherwise there's sort of option paralysis. You could
Yeah.
theoretically do anything. So giving myself like, okay, this has to be food that you can serve outside. It doesn't have to be served like super hot, or it doesn't need to be kept frozen. It needs to have like these fresh, summery flavors. That actually really helps give me a sense of direction and makes it easier for me to choose what's kind of go best.
Now I've seen it, so I know some of the recipes. Can you talk to our listeners about, give them a kind of a taste of some of the recipes that you feature in the books? In the book, sorry.
Yeah, one of my favorites is the honey clementine cupcakes from Winnie the Pooh. And one of the reasons I like it is it's all of the component parts, they go well together, but they're also really good used with other recipes, so you can kind of mix and match. The actual cupcake part is a honey almond sponge cake, which you can pair with lots of other frostings. It's really delicious. It goes really well with a lot of different flavors. And then the um, buttercream on top is a clementine buttercream. So instead of milk mixed in with the powdered sugar and the butter, I mix in clementine juice and zest. And then on top, there are these little homemade marzipan bees.
Ooh.
And yeah, the marzipan is really easy. I was so scared developing a marzipan recipe because I thought it was going to be hard. And then like once I made marzipan, I was like, oh, this is easy. Like I can develop my own. This won't be hard. And this one's really fun because generally you have to mix in some kind of a liquid. Some people just use water, some people use egg whites. I didn't want to use egg whites because I wanted my daughter to be able to eat it and she has an egg allergy. So
Hmm.
I actually used, what was it? Orange blossom water. And that
Ooh,
worked out so well. Yeah, it turned out really good.
I want to talk to you about another book that you'd had come out a couple of years ago during the pandemic, your literary holiday cookbook. Can we talk about this a little bit and what books you featured in this?
Yeah, I used, let me think back. Chronicles of Narnia was a big one,
Ooh,
and A Christmas Carol. It's all winter holidays. So there's a set of books for Christmas and for Thanksgiving, Halloween, and New Year's. Alice in Wonderland is in that one too. I almost always try to include that one to some extent. What's another one? Oh, there was Little House on the Prairie for Thanksgiving. That one
oh
was really,
yeah.
yeah, because I got to do some like rustic stuff, so that was neat.
Can you talk about some of the recipes that you featured in this book that were special to you?
I really enjoyed making the um, they were Christmas pudding profiteroles. So they're cream
Ooh,
puffs, but they're made to look like Christmas puddings. So they're
ooh.
it's a chocolate choux pastry filled with brandy pastry cream, and then there's a little bit of icing on the top with some dried cranberries and some mint. They're really cute.
Sounds adorable. Do you have any special memories of Christmas growing up?
Yeah, I was really lucky. Like a lot of my family lived close. Like I lived in the same town as both sets of grandparents. So we got to do a lot of like celebrating with our extended family. And I remember so many of these like so many things that are wrapped up in like our heritage and our culture. My family is partially Slovak. And so the Slovak side of the family, we would have oplatki every Christmas, which is,
Ooh.
yeah, it's basically it's holy bread. It's like these little cards, these rectangles, and it's the same sort of texture as like the hosts you have at church,
Yeah.
but it's this like big rectangle and it's embossed with like pictures of like the nativity or the Star of Bethlehem, and you drizzle honey on it, and we
Oh
would
wow.
eat it at Christmas. And we would also sing, there's a Slovak Christmas song we would sing every year called Poved Denim. And we actually, my husband and I got married in December, like 2 weeks before Christmas. So we played Poved Denim at our wedding. And after the mass, the priest came up to me and he goes, "Was that Poved Denim?" And it turns out he went to the same parish as my grandparents growing up and he knew that song.
Oh my God.
I
That's
know.
amazing. This is truly a small world.
I know. Big church though.
I can tell from your work that you're a huge book lover. What are some of your favorite books that you've read that you really enjoy and love kind of going back to again and again?
Oh, I love The Hobbit. That's one of my all-time favorites. In fact, I've been kind of holding off. I bought the illustrated one to read to my kids, but they're not quite there yet, like sitting there to like read chapter books. And so I'm trying to wait until I feel like they'll appreciate it a little bit more. Um, Another one, this is a newer one that I've read. It's Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I
Oh, I
love
adore that
that.
book.
Yeah, that's like one of my top 10 favorites.
Mine too. I love that book so much.
It introduced me to like, because Gothic literature has probably been my favorite genre for like, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 years. But I might have a new favorite because that like dark academia, historical fantasy, like that's also really fun. I love that.
How does literature inspire you in your work as a food blogger and cookbook author?
I feel like kind of immersing ourselves in a book is a really satisfying experience. Like we all love that feeling of kind of losing ourselves in a story. So bringing food from books to life and kind of eating the food that the character is eating while they're eating it, it brings that experience to a whole new level. It almost kind of flips it because instead of escaping reality and disappearing into a story, you're bringing the story into reality with you.
Do you have any books that you read seasonally or go back to? I know I read Dracula every Halloween, and I love to read The Christmas Carol at Christmas. Do you have anything that you read that you're looking forward to reading in the coming months?
Um, I don't have any like one specific book that I go back to, but I do read certain genres seasonally. Like Gothic lit is definitely my fall go-to. And
That
I
makes
I
sense.
will time it so that like I am reading like a Gothic book for Halloween. So yeah.
If you were to invite six literary characters to a picnic, and they could be from any book, they don't have to be from the same one, who would you invite and what would you serve at this picnic?
Let's see. Hercule Poirot for sure.
Ooh,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
Agatha Christie is my favorite author, and he is my favorite of her characters, so he would definitely have to make the list. Also probably Jo March, just
Oh,
because
nice.
she would be such a fun person to have at any party because she's very like gregarious and um, she tells such great stories. Like she's just a vibrant person. Um, and Shirley for very similar reasons, but I think she would also appreciate like all of the care that gets put into, making a party. She really notices all the little things. And Sam Gamgee, because if you're serving food, you should have a hobbit there, and he's my favorite Lord of the Rings character. Um, Aslan, which is probably a harder one because I don't know if he actually eats anything,
Yeah, it's a hard
but
one. I don't know.
it would just be such an honor to like serve a meal to Aslan. Just like just the experience of doing it would be really fun. And the last one would be Captain Nemo.
Ah,
I read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea for the first time this year, and his character was just so like fascinating and mysterious. He would definitely be a harder character to cook for because he doesn't eat anything from the land, and so you would really have your work cut out for you there, but it would be so worth it just to be able to talk to him.
nice. What would you serve? Do you have any things that you'd like, any specialties you'd like to serve?
Mm, there would definitely have to be chocolate.
That's right.
Um, Partially for Hercule Poirot because he loved chocolate, but also for me because I love chocolate, and it's not a meal if there's not chocolate at the end of it.
I want to ask you, many of my guests, I always talk to them about their cooking influence growing up. Did you have any food mentors, like a parent or a relative that cooked with you that kind of inspired you growing up?
Yeah, my mom and my grandmas have been a big inspiration. They always put a lot of emphasis on like using food to bring people together. My mom made it a big priority to like make a home cooked meal for us every night growing up, which is not easy. That's, there's a lot of time management that goes into that. And and my grandmas would always like make this really great food for holidays. Like they just used it as such an opportunity to like celebrate family, which I think is really great.
Now, it sounds like your family cooks some really neat stuff. After mentioning the Christmas food that you had, was there anything special growing up that you have fond memories of?
Oh yes. My grandma makes rojak, which is like a Slovak sweet roll. It's got you can have different fillings in it, like apricot and poppy seed, and I think there's nuts. is the other one. I like the apricot one.
Do you have any favorite food celebrities that you like to watch or that you like to read their cookbooks?
I really love Dylan Hollis and Max Miller. They do these like historical cooking videos on TV, or not
Oh
TV,
yeah,
on YouTube.
yeah.
Max Miller does Tasting History, and I don't know if Dylan Hollis has, I think it's just his name is like the name of his channel. And Max does more like maybe ancient type recipes, like way older stuff. And then Dylan does more like vintage type recipes. And they're so funny, and it's so fun to like learn all of the different ways people used to do things, especially with like methods that don't exist today. That's really fun.
Do you have any favorite go-to cookbooks that you love that you have around?
Yes, I still use my first cookbook that I ever bought when I graduated from college. It was Better Homes and Gardens, and it's still probably one of my like biggest cookbook staples because it just has all of the basics in it. And another favorite of mine, it's not really a cookbook. It's more of like a cooking reference book. It's called The Flavor Bible, and it's by Karen Page and Andrew Dorenberg. And it's more of like an inspiration book. Like you can flip through, and it's got ingredients in alphabetical order. And so you flip to an ingredient, and there will be a list of all of the other ingredients that have complementary flavors. And sometimes you can search by types of cuisine, and it will list like these are the common ingredients that are used in this kind of cuisine. And I use it a lot when I'm developing recipes where I know I have to have certain ingredients in it, but I don't necessarily have a clear idea of how I want those things to go together. That is really great inspiration.
So my last question for you is, what's next for you?
Well, right now it's still in the planning stages, but I'm planning a print copy of A Literary Picnic. So
Nice.
originally it was just going to be an ebook, and I was going to do a print copy if there was enough interest in it, and there has been. There's been a lot of interest. So my plan is to print the book, but I will probably expand it because it being only 5 recipes, if I were to, or sorry, only 5 menus, it's 25 recipes. If I were to print it as it is, it would be about the size of a picture book. And if someone's going to buy like a hard copy, I feel like they're probably going to want something, with a little bit more meat on the bones.
Yeah.
So I want to try and expand it at least by 3 menus, hopefully by 5.
Ooh,
It's still in the planning stages right now,
sounds
but
exciting.
hopefully it will be ready by next summer, I would think.
Wow, thank you. That sounds great. Thank you for being on the podcast. I really enjoy getting a chance to talk to you again. I'm happy to have you on again, and I'm going to put links to your website and your books in the bio. Allison, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
All right. That was my interview with Allison Walsh. Her new cookbook, A Literary Picnic, is out now, and we have a link to it in the bio. Coming up today is my interview with Linda Skeens regarding her new cookbook, Linda Skeens' Blue Ribbon Kitchen. Until then, I'll see you at the library.